1984 when I started with the Ministry of Defence as a technician apprentice. I was then on the fast track programme, and then from my early years, almost full-time education, mechanical engineering, I was sent off to the Royal Naval College in Greenwich to do all sorts of things, metallurgy, nuclear physics, and really then started what I would say is my real job when the UK nuclear fleet was tied up alongside, because of real issues we were having with nuclear propulsion plant chemistry control at the time. So I was plunged in as a young engineer into the depths of an integrated team, Ministry of Defence, Babcock, DML, Rolls-Royce, trying to find solutions for the nuclear programme. So you can say that I've spent my entire life in either naval ships or naval nuclear submarines. I had a short spell as the managing director for the civil nuclear programme for Babcock also. But spent 30 years with Babcock peering through the fence at BAE Systems as number 1 and 2 defence contractors in the UK. So when this opportunity came along, I was excited at the prospect of being part of something that's big, being invested in, in setting the future for our nation. It was quite interesting because I met Charles Woodburn, the group CEO, and we were discussing, of all things, the carrier task group formation in the UK. Charles was familiar that my family still lived in Adelaide, and I was doing the twice-a-year commute back between the UK and Australia. So I think that was the first hook that they, following a global search, they kind of found me on their doorstep. And as I say, I was delighted to kind of take the opportunity. But my responsibilities for Hunter, is fairly broad and wide. We're here at Henderson in WA today, and I'm building the linkages not only across the shipbuild programme but into maritime sustainment, because we're also planning for our future through Hunter. So I have responsibility for the development of the design. The UK Type 26 programme is the reference ship that was bid and secured through contract. So everything, I refer to it as a fairly easy analogy. Float and move, so hull and engines are largely the UK design. Fight and flight, which is all of the topside, the missile system, the combat system and the radars, is indigenous Australian design, and US. So we're importing that. My job is to bring that together in a schedule and cost parameter that meets the customer's objectives, that delivers 9 anti-submarine warfare frigates. But we're also about building the sovereign capability here for Australia. The fact that we've had to go offshore and buy the design on many occasions, an air warfare destroyer from the Spanish and Hunter from the British. We want to be, as a sovereign nation, capable of doing that design, procuring it from our indigenous supply chain. So my objectives is not only to build the ships, it's all to make sure that we've got the industry, the people, the capability and the technology to be able to deliver that for the next 50 years. This is a huge project for BAE Systems Australia. This is, has the potential and will double the size of the business. This is part of a 32-ship global combat ship programme. It's not only about regenerating, a new capability. We're building and adopting a new shipyard here in South Australia and Adelaide, but we're connecting Henderson, New South Wales, Melbourne. It's really about the next 25 years worth of engineering capability, which is a national skills programme also. So this is a huge win, but a big transformation for the company at the same time. Gabby is now part way through transforming the business, and establishing BAE Systems as a national partner in terms of defence, and we've had that reciprocated from the very top of defence, and that's how important the Hunter programme is. Again, really going back only some 12 months when BAE Systems was named as the preferred bidder, we had probably the fastest, most complex contract negotiation ever done by the Department of Defence in Australia. We signed the contract in December 2018, and here we are now August 2019, and we've now mobilised nearly 450 people on the programme. 400 people spread across Australia and about 50 in the UK. We've just come through the first big milestone in terms of the initial design review, so something called the systems requirement readiness was just completed. We've come through with a number of findings that set those design maturity milestones for the next 12 months, and that leads to the systems definition review late next year. We're also just set the baseline schedule, so by the end of this year we'll have all of those design inputs, all the technology transfer, all of the IP, all of the digital dockyard streams now coordinated through a single schedule. And we just struck that baseline schedule this week, in fact. So I suppose the headline is we're bang on target. We're exactly where we said we were going to be in the bid, and that's always justification of confidence that what you said in the bid is actually being delivered. So really, throughout the bulk of this year, it's about preparing the key milestones for getting us to prototyping, which starts at end of next year, and then the next 2 years of trialling those processes, such that when we press the button to start cutting steel and manufacturing of the Ship 1, we're ready to go. It's part of that long-term plan for creating that sovereign capability. We also have a long-term plan about the digitalisation of this shipbuilding business. It starts with the design that we're using. It is a fully digital design. It's a 3D model that's updated at midnight every night. So it's the baseline design is managed currently in the UK. We'll go through a process where we design separate, and we have our own version of that design capability, but every upgrade is now tested using virtual reality technique. We're gone are the days where we have kind of big whiteboards and paper and pen. It's progressed even past CAD to that certain extent in terms of the concept design. But in terms of the yard, what we are bringing on is that digital work order, such that our future kind of craft skills person can have all the access to information of the design, of the supply chain, of the materials at the fingertips, at the edge of the workbench. And as part of that process, we're working with the supply chain, we're working with universities, start-up companies, we're working with government, on testing and trying all of those new technologies. And lots of them are commercially available. We're just bringing them to our environment and giving the application in need. We're down at the new science park in South Australia in Tonsley, whereby we've got full-scale mock-ups of the process, and we're just working our way through that in terms of risk reduction. But that's how we bring it all together and make sure that when it comes to pressing that button to cut steel, then we've tested it, we've trialled it, and everything down to the robotic welders, they do what we intended them to do. There's been lots of recent articles about the economic impact of all major defence projects and whether they're worth the tax value. But I think if you kind of take that long-term view in terms of the number of students that it will create through schools and universities from STEM, the number of graduates and apprentices, we'll have up to 400 graduates at the height, employed in the Hunter programme. We've got nearly 120 today. There'll be school children who haven't yet started school that will be employed in this programme. From a supply chain, broad and wide, we've got 900 suppliers qualified to the Hunter programme just now. We've got 148 suppliers from WA where we're here today. So it's truly a national programme. And again, if we think about that skills development over that long-term need, recruitment today, in a very competitive, dynamic market with infrastructure and road transportation in the east, the remnants of minerals and iron ore and oil and gas in the west, we've got to balance that need of recruiting highly qualified systems, combat specialists, hull and propulsion specialists. We've got to find those skills today, but we mustn't take our eye off the ball where we get them for the next 15 years. We've got to work with the universities to make sure that the systems engineers are the systems engineers of the future, because not only the way that school kids learn is different, it's very, very much visual, but the technologies we'll have on warships in 10 years' time will be different to the warship number 1 and number 2. So it's a big, complex challenge, and if we can't measure the economic benefit of a project like that, then we kind of really are getting our homework wrong. This is a significant financial contribution to Australians' GDP over the next 20, 30, 40 years. And it will provide the core of a manufacturing industry that we've kind of struggled to gain after the loss of the automotive industry in Australia. We're very fortunate to be part of this global combat ship programme, which is 32 ships spread across the UK, Canada and Australia. It's being built and developed as an integrated programme, so people in Australia, the people in the UK and Canada who will start on these programmes are probably likely to revolve around at least these 3 programmes as they go through the next 5 to 10 years. But our challenge is to bring much of that skill base onshore and become less resilient and less dependent on overseas nations. So we've got to strike the balance of bringing the skills that we need today to get the programme off the ground, but transferring that to Australians. And that's largely done through the schools and universities. I think there's about 148, 150 West Australia suppliers qualified through the Hunter programme. They're predominantly in the piping and electrical services segments. So you've got companies such as H.I. Fraser, everything, bringing pumps and valves. We've got HVAC specialists from Western Australia. And again, there's many of these SMEs and suppliers who currently support the naval ship maintenance programmes. So they would common suppliers to the Hunter programme. And our challenge is developing more industrial content from that reference ship in Type 26 through the Australian industrial capability generation. So we're looking at European suppliers that could, technology could be migrated onshore. We're looking at big suppliers such as Rolls-Royce, where we're working with, supplying the gas turbines and the diesel generators, but being manufactured, supported, out of Australia. And again, that sets up a mini hub in terms of the support that they require to deliver into the Hunter programme. So, we've got 4 categories of supply chain, A, B, C and D, and we've got some hard targets that we signed up to in the contract about bringing industrial content to the Hunter programme. 50% of all Cat Cs and 100% of all Cat D suppliers will be supplied from Australia, and it's our commitment to do that through the early phases of this programme. So, it really is a national programme, and already we've got 900 suppliers qualified to the programme with 150 out of WA. It's probably more obvious for me, someone who's spent the last 4 years managing the UK Naval Maritime Programme, to come back and see the development in the relationship in what I would call the industry to defence space here in the Commonwealth. This is a fairly unique contract and relationship. Previous contracts, we've bought overseas designs and then figured out how we implement them. This is the first time where we've really embarked on a strategic partnering relationship with government. This is not about BAE Systems designing and building ships and the government marking our homework. This is a programme that we're delivering together, given its long-term need, given its sovereign capability development. It has been set up as a unique relationship programme, and it's caused us to integrate, very heavily with the UK. We have a global combat systems and ship user group, where we've got the 3 parent navies, 3 governments already talking on a more frequent basis than they probably ever did. And with myself and Steve Timms, who's the Managing Director for Naval Ships in Scotstoun and Govan, we're doing joint programme reviews. Every 2 weeks we get the 2 teams together, we learn from each other, what went well over there, how do we learn from that, and how do we avoid the same sort of schedule pitfalls. So it's much more integrated on a level that I've seen before. And I think what's really encouraging is the way that the customer and the Australian government are approaching this. From the Minister to the Secretary down into CASG, there's not a them and us feeling. It's very much that we're doing this together. And it is a long-term view. I'm not seeing that short-termism that we used to see in the past that was matched with budget cycles.